Tonight, you're going to lose consciousness for several hours. Your body will go still. Your breathing will slow. And then, somewhere around 90 minutes in, something will start happening inside your brain that scientists have been studying for over a century and still cannot fully explain. You'll begin to dream. And what's strange isn't that you dream. Every human being who has ever lived dreams. What's strange is that despite everything we know about neurons and neurochemistry and sleep architecture, nobody can tell you with certainty why your brain does this, why it constructs a private hallucination every single night of your life, complete with faces, narratives, emotions, and places that follow rules you invent and forget the moment you wake up. We have mapped the human genome. We have detected gravitational waves from collisions a billion light-years away. We have sequenced the molecular machinery of viruses in a matter of hours, but we cannot explain why you dreamed what you dreamed last night. For most of recorded history, the answer seemed obvious. Dreams were messages. The ancient Egyptians built temples specifically for dream incubation, rooms where priests slept in order to receive guidance from the gods. The Greeks believed Asclepius, the deity of medicine, visited the sick in their dreams and prescribed cures. The Iroquois believed dreams revealed the hidden desires of the soul, and that ignoring them would cause illness. Dream interpretation was not a mystical hobby. It was medicine. It was governance. In some cultures, it was law. Then, in 1899, Sigmund Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams and gave the ancient intuition a scientific framework. Dreams, he argued, were the royal road to the unconscious. Every symbol, every strange narrative, every impossible image was a coded message from the part of your mind you couldn't access while awake. Repressed desires wearing symbolic costumes. For half a century, the world ran with it. Dreams meant something, and science was finally going to decode them. Then, in 1953, a graduate student at the University of Chicago named Eugene Azarinsky changed everything while watching people sleep. He noticed that at regular intervals throughout the night, his subjects' eyes began moving rapidly beneath their closed lids. Not the slow drift of early sleep, fast, coordinated movements, as if the sleeping person were watching something. He called it rapid eye movement, REM sleep. When he woke people during these episodes, they almost always reported vivid, emotionally charged dreams. For the first time, dreaming had a measurable biological signature. Science could study it, and what it found, over the next 2 decades, quietly dismantled everything Freud had built. In 1977, psychiatrists J. Allen Hobson and Robert McCarley at Harvard Medical School proposed a theory they called the activation synthesis hypothesis. Their argument was blunt. During REM sleep, the brainstem fires random electrical signals upward into the cortex. The cortex, which is fundamentally a pattern recognition and narrative-building system, attempts to construct meaning out of this noise. It does the best it can with random data. The result is a dream. Not a message, not a coded desire, just the brain's best guess at a story when handed a signal it didn't choose. Dreams were noise being narrativized. This became the dominant scientific framework for a generation. A dream was a byproduct, a side effect of neural housekeeping, nothing more. But here's what nobody could explain away. If dreams were random noise, why did they carry such consistent emotional weight? Why did the same themes appear independently across every culture that had ever been studied? Being chased, falling, arriving somewhere unprepared, being unable to move, being unable to speak. These images showed up in the dream records of ancient Egypt, medieval Europe, indigenous communities in South America, and modern cities with no contact between them. Random noise doesn't have a theme. Random noise doesn't show up the same way in the minds of people separated by thousands of years and thousands of miles. And then there was the question of trauma. People with post-traumatic stress disorder relive their worst moments in dreams with photographic precision, night after night, sometimes for years. If dreams were meaningless static, why did they nail the most devastating experiences of a person's life with such accuracy? In 2000, Finnish neuroscientist Antti Revonsuo proposed a completely different answer. He called it threat simulation theory. His argument was evolutionary. For the vast majority of human history, survival was the central challenge. Predators, warfare, starvation. Revonsuo proposed that dreaming evolved as a rehearsal mechanism, a protected simulation space where the brain could run dangerous scenarios and practice responses without any real-world risk. Being chased in a dream isn't meaningless. It's a training drill, refined over millions of years of evolutionary pressure. The brain is stress testing your responses to threats before you ever have to face one awake. The data held up better than expected. Studies across multiple cultures showed that threatening events appear in dreams at a rate dramatically higher than they occur in waking life. The brain wasn't randomly selecting which memories to process. It was deliberately oversampling danger, running the hardest scenarios again and again, looking for a better outcome. But Revonsuo's theory still didn't account for something researchers had been quietly documenting for decades. Dreams are not only about danger. They are overwhelmingly about unresolved emotional experience, specifically the emotional weight of recent events. And in 2010, that observation finally got a mechanism. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley, working with researcher Els van der Helm, published findings that reframed the entire question of why we sleep. During REM sleep, the brain reactivates the day's emotional memories, but it does so in a neurochemical environment stripped of norepinephrine, the chemical most associated with stress and anxiety. The brain is replaying your most charged emotional experiences in a low-stress chemical state, running the memory again, but without the flood of distress that accompanied it the first time. Walker called it overnight therapy. The brain takes the raw, painful, unprocessed charge of an experience and files it away as a memory you can access without being overwhelmed by the original emotion. The implications are enormous. Sleep deprivation, specifically the loss of REM sleep, doesn't just make you tired and irritable. It leaves your emotional wounds open. Studies show that people who are woken during REM sleep following a traumatic event are significantly more likely to develop PTSD because they never complete the processing cycle. Every night of good REM sleep is, in a very literal neurochemical sense, therapy you didn't know you were getting. And yet, none of this explains the content. Walker's research explains what REM sleep accomplishes. It does not explain why it looks the way it does, why the memory processing takes the form of you standing in your childhood kitchen while someone you've never met serves you a meal you've never eaten, and somehow, none of it strikes you as unusual until you wake up. Why dead people show up perfectly alive, why logic is optional, why time collapses and expands inside the same dream. The most recent research points toward a brain system called the default mode network. It's a cluster of regions that activates most strongly when you are not focused on any specific external task. It's what runs when you daydream, when you imagine the future, when you think about people who aren't in the room. During dreaming, this network runs almost completely unchecked. The regions responsible for rational evaluation and executive control go nearly silent. And the default mode network, which is, at its core, a simulation engine, runs without a filter. Some researchers now believe that dreams are not a special state at all. They are simply what your brain does when the editor leaves the room. Every theory explains a piece. None of them explains all of it. Threat simulation explains why you're being chased. Emotional processing explains why your ex keeps appearing years after it ended. Random neural activation explains the incoherence. The default mode network explains the strange creativity. Assembled together, they describe what's happening. They do not explain why. Here is what we do know. You will spend approximately 6 years of your life dreaming. 6 years inside a private hallucination your brain builds and destroys every night. Populated with people you know and people who have never existed. Running scenarios that follow rules you invented and forgot before you finished your first cup of coffee. Every human being who has ever lived has done this. Every one of your ancestors. Every person alive right now. It is one of the most universal experiences in the history of the species, and we still don't know why. Which raises a question nobody in sleep science has been able to answer cleanly. If dreams are just byproducts, just noise being processed, or threats being rehearsed, or emotions being filed away, why do they feel like more than that? Why, across every culture in the entire archaeological and historical record, have human beings looked at their dreams and felt certain that something in there was trying to communicate? Maybe they were wrong. Or maybe the science hasn't caught up yet to something the dreaming brain has been doing, quietly and without explanation, for 300,000 years.